How's it going, everyone? We're going to take a look at the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse action figure of Miles Morales by Sentinel Toys in their SV action figure line. Now, this is the clear version of the figure. Just to rewind and recap just a little bit. So, Sentinel Toys often, I believe, from what I've looked at, do a lot of kind of mech toys, things like that, and less so of, say, human articulated toys. But the SV action line seems to be something relatively new-ish by them. They have done Into the Spider-Verse before with full color version of Miles Morales, so this figure but in full color, as well as the Peter Parker figure as well. I do have both of them. I've been sitting on both of those figures for a long time, but I've got so many figures to unbox that everything kind of falls into the backlog. This one ended up coming in a few weeks ago, and I thought, let me just do this one first. So while I do have the full color version, I've never actually unboxed it personally. So I don't know what it's like personally, but I know reading online and on Reddit and YouTube and seeing other things, people do like that figure. They are expensive, by the way. I got this one from Hobby Genki, and I'll have to kind of put the price on screen because it escapes me. But I think it was probably around 13,000 yen, and then that's probably without shipping, something like that. So quite expensive. Sentinel Toys aren't the cheapest kind of figure manufacturer out there. They do a little bit more high spec stuff. So like I said, again, this is the clear version of the figure. The package is quite similar to what we saw with the full color version. My memory kind of is a bit hazy with that. You got a little bit of a cutout showing you a preview of the figure right there. You got an alternate head, the masked head, again with that clear look, and then you got unmasked head of Miles in the top right there, and then you just kind of got logo and one picture of the clear version there. Down the side panel is quite similar to probably what was on the full color version, and then on this side, this might be the front. It's probably the back. I always think the tape bit is the back. This is kind of like the key art used in the figure, which I think looks really cool. It's a nice key art for sure. Down this panel though is showing you the actual figure, the clear version. A few pictures of that. You do get a stand in this, I believe, so that's going to be cool. Top is just a logo of the movie, and then the bottom is some mumbo jumbo. So let's get this open and see what the figure is all about. So here's everything that's included in the box. We'll go through the option parts like we normally do, and then we'll go through the actual figure itself. So skip ahead if you want to see just the figure. So I've already assembled the base stand. These guys include a nice base stand, by the way, which is very nice of them. You know, SH Figure Arts, I'm still waiting for you guys to make stands a default in your packs, but maybe that'll increase the price. Anyway, so we've got actually two little kind of poles here. So here's a look at the actual pole. It's kind of got the segmented bit where you can tighten or loosen the screws if you need to. This by default has a claw piece, which is just kind of sitting there already by default. You just yank it off, and then you can use these kind of phrase pieces, crack for example, and then just plug it onto the actual end of the peg like so. The end bit is quite important. So actually, when you get this out of the box, what you might find is this little bottom bit here might end up falling off or has already dropped off in your pack. This kind of just slides in there like so. Don't worry too much about it, but just don't lose that either. I'll explain this in just a second. So as I mentioned, the claw already, that's already going to be on the end like it is here. So what you can see is I've already put that into the actual base bit itself. So this plastic bit here is actually supposed to be here. What you need to do to assemble it is you push one of them out. I'm not going to do that fully. You just push them out. You can just do it from the top and then rep it out from the back. Just mind the pegs. And then what you do is that stopper bit that I mentioned, you just kind of remove that first. You add this little stand bit in like so anywhere, and then you can see it slides back and forth. And these little pegs here will actually act as stoppers. But then what you need to do is just reassemble this little kind of stopper bit here. It's a little bit like squeezing, or like if you've got big fingers like I have, then it might be a little bit tricky, but give it a shot and it hopefully should work, and then it should kind of like stop things going. So for example like that. So it's only going to go about halfway. Play around with it how you want. You can also take out the center bit by pushing down on it. I'm not sure why you would do that, but you can do that. The other phrase pieces that you get are bye and pow. I'm not sure if the full color versions came with these or these are unique to this one. I have a feeling they might be unique to this one. We'll start with the full color version option parts included in this pack first. Now these actually apply to the full color version of the figure if you've got it. So I do actually have it. I just haven't got around to open it because I have a backlog of figures. So this full color sculpt here, this is the first time I'm actually seeing this in full color up close because like I said, I haven't opened the other one. So I don't really know the quality of that, but this is actually pretty good. I really like the face sculpt in general for this Miles. He's kind of got a little bit of a smirk going on. Not as confident expression, which is cool. Kind of like, oh yes, I am Spider-Man. You got the neck piece also there as well, with a little bit of the skin kind of shown and a little bit of the top of the neck part of the costume as well. So once again, if you do have the full color version of this costume, then this should be quite good as well. It's a really nice piece. I can't remember exactly if the Mafex one included it. I think it did. But here they've added it as a pack-in for this one. You also get this kind of unworn mask, or the mask off little piece here, which Mafex Spider-Man figures tend to come with. So this is quite cool. It's scrunched up in a very similar way if you've seen that one, for example. So yeah, that's kind of basic. You also get one right hand as well, which you can hold on to the mask. The sculpt of the right hand is quite cool. Again, quite similar to what we may have seen in a Mafex one as well. I really should get around to opening the full color version, but let's just carry on and focus on the clear version right here. Miles has the fists already attached to him, but then he also comes with a pair of kind of regular hands like so. So all the kind of proportions on this Sentinel figure, just like the Mafex one as well, are a little bit kind of big hands, big feet, to kind of give it that a little bit more cartoon expression. And because he's still a teenager, young teenager, the proportions tend to be a little bit bigger for their hands and feet, I guess. So you got slightly bigger hands and long hands and feet here. This is a clear version once again. So the clarity, or the way that this translucency works, is it might be hard to kind of see on camera, but you can kind of see the peg, and then it goes to the palm bit, and then the heel of the palm, and then into the fingertips itself. The fingertips themselves are pretty much painted like a white color, and then the actual bulk of the hand is going to be a bit more translucent, kind of a watery blue effect. Let's call it that for now, or an ice blue. You also do get the web crawling hand, so you get the fingers, you can see, are nice and kind of curved or scrunched outwards, which is really cool, really nicely done as well. I like the sculpt in these. You do also have the web texture on them as well, so just kind of playing around with this figure, it's giving me a lot of kind of like feeling towards the Mafex figure. Again, texture is quite similar. You can see that they're, again, with the kind of white tips, and then the bulk of the hand is going to have that more translucency to it. Then you got the alternate sort of web hands, or you can use these as action dynamic hands as well. So these are sculpted a little bit different, like the fingers are all kind of wide apart. I really like the hands, these ones, by the way. I think they're just kind of really animated looking. So I quite like that with my action figures, really having animated looking hands. It also comes with a pair to hold a web line as well, so same sort of effect going on the hands, but I'll show you that web line right here. So this web line is actually just going to be not white like Mafex tends to do, but pretty much clear plastic that runs throughout. So you can see the curved end right here, and then this little bit at the end will actually just slip into the hand that I just showed earlier on, like so. So you can plug the end in various ways, like this way, and then this way as well. And then that bit, I assume, just kind of hangs from wherever you want to display your figure. And finally, he also comes with thwip hands or webbing hands. So this is actually pre-combined. So I'm very familiar more with SH Figuarts and Mafex, where the web bit is actually not attached. You have to do that yourself. But here they've actually pre-attached it. Now this might be the same case with the full color version of this figure. I'm not 100% sure, but this is a closer look at the hand. So it's kind of your typical web thwipping hand, but then just to have a closer look at where the actual web bit is on there. It's kind of in the heel of the hand there, you can see. I did try to take it out to see if it can come out. It probably does, but I didn't want to risk breaking it. And then it's on a clear web shot line, just like the web line that we saw before, which I do like. I really like these hands as well. The web lines or the web shot hands are very cool, and the webbing on them is really neat as well. The final effect part that you get in the pack is going to be this kind of stunning one where he uses a little shock bit. So this one is clear as well. Again, I don't know if the full color version comes with a version that's might be a bit more yellow. It doesn't seem like it. I think this is only included here. But essentially, to attach this, you basically just need to use the hand, attach the hand to the main actual arm of the figure, and then you can just kind of slip this on. So the peg will kind of slip through a bit like this way it is. So you can do it in different ways, but as long as you've got clearance to have the peg coming through and the rest of the arm, and then it should kind of just sit like this. Hopefully that demonstrated that, but if not, it's not too difficult to do. But again, you can use it for this hand, or you can use it for the actual full color version of the figure as well. Once again, I do have the full color version, I just never opened it. Finally, then in the pack, you do get an alternate head sculpt, which is going to be the kind of, I guess, the people's eyebrow. So one eye is going to be squinted, which is the right eye here, and then you got the left eye. So just because we can do it more clearly here, the lenses on the actual head sculpt, so this one and the regular one as well, are kind of clear. You can see that, and glossy. But then the rest is going to be all textured, which is neat, and there's a nice attention to detail. All the texture work is there, and all the web lines you can kind of see. It might not be super clear when you've got this on display, but once you've got it in hand, you can feel all those web lines. And depending on the light, you can see the actual light bouncing off of the actual webbing as well. So that's really cool to see. It is a very nice like translucency in my opinion. But let's see and discuss that more with the actual figure itself, which is a very tiny little figure. So this figure doesn't stand very tall. I've misplaced my measuring tape, so I can't measure him. Guessing he stands about 10 centimeters, maybe a little bit more than that. He is a smaller guy, but he's quite lean. You can see that, very, very lean. And like I said just earlier on that I touched on, is that he is reminding me a lot of the Mafex version of the figure, which I have opened, but I haven't opened the full color version. Again, I'll repeat that, I haven't opened the full color version of this figure. So essentially, this is my first time getting hands-on with the Sentinel SV Action Spider-Man figures. So first impression is pretty good. There's one major thing that I don't like about it, but we'll get into that in, I guess, when it comes to articulation, I suppose. But in terms of the way this guy looks as a clear figure and a clear variant, I quite like it. I kind of like translucent figures. I think they add a little bit of extra kind of, I don't know, they just look cool to me. And this guy is no different. He does look quite cool. Really, it is going to depend on your own display and the light that's going on around there. So, for example, if you've got very harsh light, he might look very watery. You might not like that. If you've got a slightly dimmer light, he might look a bit more, I don't know what the word is. Maybe more mystic. I don't know. But it looks cool to me. Not everyone likes translucent colors. That's totally clear. That's totally fine. But that's, yeah, for me, I quite like it. And that's one of the issues I was going to talk about. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Let me just place that back on. But otherwise, yeah, I think he looks pretty good. The other thing I think people might complain about is that because it is a clear version of this figure, or camouflage version, it means that you don't really see the web lines for the most part. Again, it depends on the lighting. So here you can see the torso bit where I'm pointing. You can work it out, but for the most part, further away, he might just kind of look like an Iceman type of thing, which may not look as interesting. But again, I quite like it. So that's what matters here, is my opinion, right? So yeah, he is quite clear. There's not a huge amount to talk about because it mostly is just a clear figure. There's no real excess paint, really. You know, we'll just talk about the shoulder bit and then the chest emblem. But other than that, you know, there's not really a lot, right? So it's fine. It's fine. That's kind of the point. So it kind of saves itself from really any negatives, I guess. I guess one real nitpicky thing is because it is a clear or translucent figure. So sometimes when that happens with, say, the webbing part I've mentioned in some other Spider-Man videos, is once you kind of crack or bend or there's some kind of flex happening with this kind of plastic, you will sometimes see those creases, right, where it goes white a bit. So that's kind of a warning sign if something's going to break or not. So you might not see that here because, for example, at his neck bit, there it's a little bit more white than, say, the blue that I'm seeing everywhere else, which kind of freaks me out a bit, that something's happening or breaking there. It freaks me out because apparently translucent figures tend to crack or get damaged a lot easier than actual solid color ones. I'm not sure how true that is, but that's apparently the case. But yeah, that's something that does worry me about this figure. But so far, touch wood, plastic, whatever, nothing has been broken at this point in time. But in terms of looks, to kind of conclude that topic, I do quite like the way that this guy looks. I quite like it. Not for everyone, but I definitely do quite like it. Now, otherwise, outside of the color kind of things, I think the posture-wise and the kind of build, he looks very similar again to the Mafex one, in my opinion. I really got to kind of compare that. I've put that one away. I put a lot of my figures away, so this is just going off memory. Yeah, he looks a lot like the Mafex one. So off the bat, I mean, I guess it's going to depend on price at this stage, but it's a good thing that he looks quite like the Mafex one because I quite like that figure in general. So let's go through the articulation and then I'll kind of talk about a bit more about what I didn't like about it, and you would have seen a hint of that just now too. The articulation is pretty sound with this guy. His head movement is very, very good. The neck could be a little bit better, I think. I mean, not terrible, but there's just a little bit of stiffness there for me. But I got to play around with it a bit more. The shoulder we did see, and that's what's going to happen to some people. For me, his left shoulder comes off a lot. So just to kind of show you, actually, it's just on a ball joint there. Like, so there's no peg that goes into the actual bulk of the arm. So it's okay. It gives him plenty of range of motion for sure. But then because of that just being on there, there's no real kind of secure connection, so it will come off a bit. The right arm did come off once or twice, but it's definitely my left shoulder that's got the issue. I'll probably end up using some like tissue paper or something if it becomes too much of an issue to kind of give it some friction and some padding. But yeah, so far it does stay. Depends on the pose that I've got. It should be fine. He's got a twist at the bicep there. Because it's translucent, it might not always be clear, but he's definitely got a twist there, the elbow like so, and that's really great. You can actually touch your shoulder. And then this is where I really think is quite bad. for this, and I'm really surprised. So he's got 0 articulation, actually. He's only got twist with the hands, which to me is shocking. That's like basic figure 101. So I don't know why they did that. Well, I can guess why they did that. It's because they kind of sculpted the angle of the hands to be that fixed way for the other hands. I don't personally like that, so let's kind of show you that. So it's just on a fixed peg. Now, once I've done that, I'll say it now and I'll say it again later. Translucent plastic, people say there's higher risk of breaking, so you may not want to keep changing this guy's hands because then, yeah, the peg may end up snapping. That's a high risk with translucent figures, apparently, or clear figures. So keep that in mind. So yeah, the lack of articulation, like there's no kind of, other than rotation, there's basically nothing. So I don't like that because I really like the micro articulation I can do with a lot of other figures in terms of the angle of, say, when you're throwing a punch. But he completely lacks that. Very, very surprising to me. So that's it. He's only got the twist there. Torso is pretty good though. Very Mafex like. I quite like it. Or even SH Figure Arts. It reminded me quite a lot of those. So he can crunch a lot and then lean back a lot. So really amazing stuff if it comes to, you know, the acrobat or gymnastic poses that Spider-Man is known for. The legs can kind of kick up pretty high. Let's be honest there. They kick up nice and high there. And then for the splits, I'm hoping the legs don't come off. Yeah, that's pretty good as well. So pretty good articulation around the hip and groin area. You can see that. Very similar again to Mafex and the SH Figure Art Spider-Man figures. More close to Mafex, I would say, because Spider-Man one has the kind of thong approach to it. But they're pretty much quite similar, all in all. The knee bends like so. Again, pretty much like the Mafex once again. And then same for the ankle, which has all the pivot and rotation there. So he's got all the ankle stuff, which is crazy, but nothing at the hand. Super weird. Super, super weird. And then finally, with the toe hinge, and that's about it. I did skip actually before. He's got white soles there, and then that's about it. But articulation is very good. Generally speaking, it's on par with most of the other figures out there like Mafex and SH Figure Arts, but it's just the hands. The hands are super weird, and that is the second thing that I didn't like about this figure. So the two major things I don't like about this figure are the shoulder bit popping off a lot, and then the wrist just doesn't have the same sort of range of motion or articulation as basically any other good figure manufacturer out there. So that really, I'm still shocked, even doing this video right now, at the time of, basically now, I'm still super shocked that they didn't have that. It's weird. What a weird decision not to have the normal articulation. Like, you've got it at the ankle. Why not just add it at the wrist? I don't know. I don't know what the reason is for that. I'm not sure, again, if it's the same for the full color version, which we can actually see here. Yeah, it's probably going to be the same for the full color version because this is just on a peg too. It's such a weird decision. Why would you do that? If you're making a figure, everything else is so good. Why would you sacrifice that point? I'm just weirded out by that. Like, that's so weird. That again is quite annoying, but you know, that can happen with Mafex as well, which has one of the best Spider-Man figures and other figure manufacturers out there. So not ideal, but it can happen. Maybe I'm just unlucky with that one. But again, I might be unlucky there, but this one, the actual ankle bit is really, or wrist bit is really what lets me down with this figure. Anywho, let's swap some parts. So to take off the head, just pull it off like so. Once again, it is a translucent or clear figure, and apparently that has a higher chance of breaking or snapping, but we'll do it anyway. That's the replacement of the head, and it looks like that. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this head sculpt. Maybe because it's a clear version, so the eyes look weird. But I don't know. If you like it, that's cool. I'm totally fine with the regular head sculpt personally, with both eyes being on their true size. We saw how to do the hands before, but I'll do that anyway. So I just remove one hand, and I'll add which hand? Yeah, let's just add the wall crawl hand, and just plug it back in like so. And there we go. It looks quite nice. Actually, just kind of show you a little bit more how that translucency works. So you, as I mentioned, you got the fingertips painted in white, then it goes translucent around the kind of wrist area, forearm area, and then not as much, but still some translucency around the bicep, and then you kind of get back to the painted bits there. So it is quite good, and there's a lot of gradation happening, which I quite like about this. Again, it's not for everyone, but I personally like it quite a bit. That's how you swap the hands. And then that's basically it, right? There's nothing else to actually change with this guy. You can put him on the base stand that's included, get him into some poses. That's pretty easy to do. Play around with him, because Spider-Man is one of those figures that especially with this one as well, is he's got so many fun kind of poses that you could do, fun gymnastic poses that you could do. But a lot of people would tend to go with like basic poses that frankly don't look very good. I mean, I'm doing it on video right now, but yeah, just use a lot of the reference materials that are out there from the comics, from your favorite artists. Just go to your favorite story, Google image search, iconic Spider-Man cover art, for example, and there will be tons of reference material that you can use for your own posing on your own display. Seriously, if you're buying Spider-Man figures, don't go for boring poses. Don't go for like less dynamic, static poses. Play around with the minor points of articulation and range of motion and your angles as well. Obviously, if it's on a display, you can change the angle because you're going to be walking around, but definitely avoid the static poses when you've got beautiful, expensive figures like this. There's no need for boring static poses. Even if you're doing a standard pose or a standing pose, you can go for something a little bit more imposing as well. Actually, speaking of standing, this guy does struggle to stand a bit. Now, it's probably because of weight distribution and his teeny ankles. His feet aren't exactly small. But yeah, I had a bit of trouble getting him to just kind of stand in a fairly neutral superhero pose, for example. Generally, though, with Spider-Man figures, much better to just get him into a more Spidey gymnastic pose. All in all, this is a pretty good figure that I quite liked. I quite like the clear version of figures or translucent figures. There's just something about them that appealed to me. But the price is the biggest factor for me with this actual package. So the Sentinel figures are quite expensive. And the Sentinel, I think, is notoriously expensive, especially for their mech range, because they're using different parts. Here, though, while it's very good for the most part, the wrist leaves a lot to be desired. That's something that I can't kind of get over still. It's also the price. So this cost me, I think, after shipping, probably 13,000, maybe 14,000 yen. So it's not cheap by any means, but that means that like you've got Mafex and SH Figure Arts, which deliver amazing quality Spider-Man figures as well, whether it's comic book or MCU stuff, still very amazing quality Spider-Man figures. So for me, I would say use the money on Mafex, but if you really want a clear version of Miles Morales, by a Japanese manufacturer to that kind of quality, I think this is pretty much the only choice we have so far. Saying that, SH Figure Arts are definitely doing Across the Spider-Verse figures, so hold off. Check out those figures. If you like those, then you might want to pre-order those because they are going to be about half the price of this, but they're not going to be clear versions, of course. But yeah, think about the price when it comes to this figure is all I'm going to say. And of course, the wrists, which, as I mentioned, leave a lot to be desired. Still, I think the figure is not bad, and it's my first Sentinel figure in the SV action line. So not bad, but some improvements to go along the way. With all that said, though, thank you very much for swinging by and watching this video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next videos whenever they may be. Take care now. See you next time.